Hello everybody, welcome back to the Jeep Journals, where today is day 6 of my 7-day vegan challenge. Yesterday I was in Big Bend National Park. I hiked South Rim and I made it back to San Antonio last night. And today's Saturday, January the 15th. I still haven't decided if I want these episodes to run continuously for the 7 days. In other words, I've posted the first 5 during each weekday. I don't know if this one will post on Saturday or if it'll post on Monday. I might as well keep them together. That's my initial thought. I'm not really sure. However, that's all administrative stuff that I can figure out later on the fly. And quite frankly, without much feedback, I don't really know what to do to cater to my audience. So if there's something that you've seen so far in this journey, in this 6-day segment that you enjoy, please let me know. And conversely, if there's something that you don't really like, also please let me know. There's a comments area, there's a description that talks about this journey and the purpose of it. There's a website that goes with this, which is thejeepjournals.com. There are a number of things that this site is really trying to do aside from entertain you. This isn't really such an entertainment value video as much as it is an informative video. This informative video is showcasing the struggles of regaining our sobriety, so to speak. And our sobriety can include the removal of addictions of food, chemical-based substance, pills, alcohol, drugs, and on and on. All of the addictions that we tend to entertain ourselves with are not nearly as entertaining as the real life that we're able to entertain ourselves with out there in the world. Yesterday was a magnificent day. I ended up leaving San Antonio on Thursday night at 10:30 in the evening, and then I arrived at Big Bend at the National Park's Basin parking lot at 5:55 in the morning, and I slept for approximately 2 hours in order to allow for the possibility of being able to see the trails without having to start off using a flashlight. And I hiked the entirety of South Rim. I took with me oranges, cherries, cashews, and water. I also took a collapsible chair. For anyone who looks far enough past into my videos, you know that I have a lot of excellent camping gear, which is also quite handy if other people show up that you don't have seats for. It's quite handy to have in all kinds of circumstances. But in this particular case, I didn't use the chair. And so for that reason, I walked up South Rim with excess baggage. And basically, I took 2 Nalgene bottles filled with water, 2 just standard size Nalgene bottles filled with water. I drank 1 bottle of that water during my trip, during my walk around South Rim. And it turns out I didn't drink the other bottle until after I got back to my vehicle, when I essentially began my return home. I didn't know that I was going to return home, but I do know that today's forecast is that it's going to be approximately 37 degrees as a high temperature in Big Bend, and the overnight low is going to be 20 degrees. So starting out today in South Rim would have been a little bit troublesome for me, because I was already a little stiff from walking so far in just my sandals. Of course, I had other clothing on, don't get me wrong. I wasn't just hiking South Rim in just sandals. For anyone who's hearing this, I don't want you to misinterpret this. This wasn't that type of a freeing experience. But anyway, when I got back down to the trailhead and when I made it to the visitor center at 4:40, it was about 4:44, I'm kind of generalizing. It might not have been exactly 4:44. It might have been 4:45. The point is that I was still able to go into the visitor center and receive my visitor's permit that showed that I was there in the park essentially legally by following guidelines. So I do not recommend what I'm talking about to anyone out there because basically what I did essentially placed me in the park hiking a trail without having theoretically checked in with anybody. Thankfully, I know a lot of people in the park, and I was able to flesh out my plans and make sure that somebody was aware of where I was going to be. With all of that in mind, this is something that you may want to consider if you've ever wanted to hike South Rim, if you're fit enough to walk around South Rim. I know that it was challenging for me. However, it would be less challenging if I was wearing different footwear, only because there were definitely a lot of treacherous situations that you're walking across. And if your feet are not acclimated to such things, your feet can feel pretty beat up by the end of the trail. And so towards the end of the trail, I was walking a little bit slower than I normally would, but that wasn't really something that I would not have experienced with hiking boots. However, with hiking boots, socks, and the ability to switch out socks, I would have almost been able to retread my feet, basically, if I had such a need to do so. The interesting overall takeaway from this is that even though it might have been easier to walk in standard hiking shoes, I still feel like carrying less weight from head to toe, including less weight in the form of heavy hiking boots in contrast to basically some sandals, some open air sandals, where my feet were able to be warmed by the sun, cooled by the breeze, and where I was able to be more mindful about where I was stepping. Maybe it wouldn't have been easier to walk in hiking shoes. What I do know is that I set out to see if South Rim was an achievable trail to tackle during the course of just one day off. And I believe it is. I believe it is for anyone who has that much of an energy to be driven to do something like this. However, even though I got back to town last night, remember, I told you I slept for about 2 hours yesterday morning after not having slept at all the night before. And so this morning, which happened to be Saturday, I did sleep in quite a bit and I took my time getting up. So if there's some kind of a job that you have to be fully aware and awake at the next day, if you're performing surgery 2 days from now, I don't expect that you would want to leave from San Antonio to get to Big Bend and hike South Rim and get back that night for the surgery that's going to basically happen the very following morning. If you have a work from home convenience type job where you're able to yawn a few times while you're doing your administrative tasks, maybe consider it. But more than that, what you want to consider is that the reason that I'm doing these things is to show you that, again, I had cherries, and I don't know if I listed the full array of things that I took with me. I took a down blanket just in case, but I didn't use that. I took the seat that I told you that I didn't actually use. I took an extra bottle of water that I didn't use. But out of the things I used, I took cherries, cashews, and oranges, and basically that's what I had to eat, to fuel up on, and to enjoy my walk with. And each time when I sat down to take a break and I had some cherries, I felt hydrated, I felt energized. And each time when I ate those cherries and drank water, I felt fully capable of walking another few miles. And so that's what I would do. I would sit down at some point when I found the right boulder, because it took too long to assemble the chair. And quite frankly, it was very windy, so I didn't ever send up my chair like I had planned to at the end of South Rim. And I would sit down on a boulder and have some snacks. Now, let me tell you, when I had my orange, that was one of the most marvelous things that anyone can do after working extremely hard, is to eat something so juicy and so delicious. These are foods that are fun to talk about. I'm going to add this segment into another segment of mine called Fun Foods. That channel has a lot of different insights that talk about these concepts, where typically we enjoy flavored drinks and the sugary alternative to what the real deal is. And in that way, we've overlooked for quite some time in adulthood what it is that really nourishes our body. So I hope that you take some time, whether I do this as a 5-day or 7-day segment, or 5 days and then 2 days in the next week. I hope you take some time to look for the segments that are just about the Big Bend National Park, which is my primary driving force that has helped me to share trails with so many of you, both on and off the trail. Many of you have seen me on Faceplant, that social media site that I used to be on way back when. Many of you have seen me on Instakilo, where we talk about just basically sharing images of wildlife and nature in general. And for whatever reason, those channels didn't resonate well with a lot of people, because although I'm showing you the amazing things that are in these parks, I'm also talking about the amazingly challenging things that we're encountering. For an example, as soon as we were mandated to wear face coverings, I began to find plenty of those things all over all of the parks that I visited, including the national park system. This time itself, I didn't find that. However, I did find quite a number of bottle caps from one-time use, disposable bottles of nourishment. And that's just going to happen. I even found a Nikon camera lens cap on the trail. These things are going to come loose from us. The more we carry up, especially if we don't have any consideration for it, if we have excess, the more we carry up, the more we're going to accidentally lose to the trails and possibly never recover from. In this particular case, I saw some deer on the trail. I saw Mexican blue jays. I saw acorn woodpeckers, and maybe 2 other variety of birds. I can't remember what kind of oriole it is, and then another smaller bird that I'll have to look up later. But I didn't see any rock squirrels, any regular squirrels, any bears. There weren't even any bear tracks throughout the entire range of that trail system that I took. I took the whole loop. The only part I didn't include was the northeast loop, which is open right now, apparently. And I saw a lot of things that I hadn't noticed before, because they weren't there before. There was a lot of fire damage from the fires that occurred in the park last year. And I can only wonder, where did all the animals go? Did they move to another side of the mountain range? Did they move outside of the park? I'm not really sure. What I'm certain of is that all of the small critters that I typically enjoyed seeing in the past during that entire time when I was in the park, because I arrived at the park at about 4 in the morning, and then I drove to the interior of the park and got to where I was going to end up taking off on my hike about 2 hours later. I explored throughout the area of the park on a not so cold night. It was about 50 degrees overnight. It was 50 something degrees. And actually, that's another thing I wanted to point out. Yesterday, it was 77 degrees in Big Bend. Today, it's supposed to be 44, maybe in the 50s. It depends on where you're at the upper elevations or lower elevations. But either way, the overnight low was supposed to be somewhat pleasant, mid-50s. Tonight, it's going to be 20. Sometime during this upcoming week, from when I checked last, on Tuesday, I believe, it's supposed to be 77 again. So we have these extreme fluctuations of temperature, up and down, and all of the insects have been struggling to become so prolific that they're able to feed the animals that typically would feed on them. So that's why I think we have a decline in some of the things that we're seeing. Some of those things which I've been pretty vocal about on any of my channels, even in the form of just typing, even on the one where you post Insta-Kilo pictures about things that are supposed to be uplifting and bring you joy. I'll always share that insight along with the pictures. And for whatever reason, that's met with a lot of resistance. In this channel right here on YouTube, where I'm telling you my perspective, and you're watching this video trying to figure out, what's this guy doing? This guy's crazy. He's got a Jeep, he's got guitars. He can't do this, he can't do that, but he can definitely do this and he can definitely do that. If you're watching this channel and there's something you enjoy that I'm doing, please post it in the comments. If there's a video that you like, please share it. Please click the like button at least. And if there's anything that you've seen that has brought you any kind of awareness And if you believe that you can receive more awareness or share more awareness over the course of time and help me course correct whatever it is that I'm seeing, please subscribe to the channel. Do not be shy about participating either online or offline. I prefer it to be online because then we have many people who can see a conversation as it develops. We have an accountable recollection, a record of things that can be said in the past, that have been said in the past, that can be analyzed for accuracy, and also for accuracy over the course of time. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to tell you one story. The last time I was at this park, I was hiking with a group. It was a club that typically arranges outings to go to these places where you have a lot of usually people with time on their hands. And so that's not typically my age demographic. That's usually an older age demographic who have already retired and they've got the money to fund these things. I was with a group like that, and I was brought in from my insight that has to do with wildlife. And while we were hiking the trail, the same trail, South Rim, somebody asked about the peregrine falcon nesting area, and I made an observation that even though it is an important area, the northeast part of the rim that I told you was open, that I didn't take that extra leg on this trail, even though it was open, because it's not nesting season for the peregrine falcons and golden eagles, even though it was open, I made a comment saying that we had a significant decline in this type of animal throughout the park, possibly throughout the region, but for sure throughout the park. At that moment, one of the group of people who were a little bit more able to spend money and time walking these areas were talking about how I was wrong. And they said it was one of the most important nesting sites, and there were probably 17 pairs of peregrine falcons that are nesting right now. I made a comment asking for us to pay attention and count how many hawks, how many eagles, how many falcons we saw throughout the day, or even throughout that trip while we were there. During that whole experience, we didn't see a single bird of prey from anywhere on South Rim. I can tell you from my experience, starting in 1993 when I hiked that trail to begin with, actually I didn't even hike the trail, it was a horse ride back in that day in the park. They had horse rides. I took a horse most of the length of the trail, and then we got to walk the rest of the trail and then conveniently ride the horse back. That was an experience, and I remember how many hawks, how many different tarantulas, how many different animals we saw. Javelina, we even saw javelina in the upper South Rim area, in the upper Chizos Basin. That's something that is less and less common, and it's less and less common because of these extreme weather adversities that we're continuing to experience. Just as one example of something that's hit both San Antonio and West Texas, we had an extreme frigid downturn in temperature that included precipitation, snow, that blanketed the ground for quite some time. And after everything thawed out, we had a fraction of the remaining cactus, which was left to fruit. The fraction of the remaining cactus, which was formerly fruiting all the time and giving food to some of these animals. And that fraction of cactus produced small fruit that didn't quite ever ripen in many cases. And so all of the food sources, as we think about it, the insects, the cactuses, the flowers that are not blooming regularly at certain intervals, all of those things are causing interruptions for the things that are coming to eat from those things, the birds that are coming to eat from the nectar, the hummingbirds, the bees and the insects that are coming to eat from the nectar of these blankets of flowers that typically were there in a more timely basis. And now we're having days where we're having 77 degrees yesterday, 45 degrees today, 77 degrees next week. Who knows what's going to happen next? What I do know is that in this time, more than any other time, it's imperative that we use the power that we have to basically do something to course correct. And I'm asking you to subscribe and help me course correct any of the information that I'm sharing that's not accurate. If you find any of it's accurate, please don't panic. Remember that there's always hope. And the first thing we have to do is recognize what we are capable of. You don't have to worry about what everyone else is capable of. You don't have to lobby. You don't have to worry about what that politician says. You only have to worry about what you are capable of. Once you know what you're capable of, you can literally move mountains, or at least move around the mountain for long enough to share what it is that you're seeing. So until next time, this is day 6 of the 7-day vegan challenge, and I completely enjoyed it so far. At first, I was a little bit disappointed. There were so many meaty entrees that I used to salivate for. Right now, I'm not. Right now, what I want to do, and in fact, I'm going to go do it right now, I'm going to have a beautiful juicy pear, and that's going to be my breakfast. That's going to be the first thing I start out with today, because I didn't get hungry the same way that I did when I was eating 3 times a day, having to stop all the time to get something before I could start my day. So there was this guy that I saw, this cat down the road, real smart guy. He would always talk about you weren't eating all the time, you weren't spending all the time on the toilet. And he's right. Once you learn to eat again when you're actually hungry, when you need nourishment, then at that point your nourishment gets used to reinvigorate the cells, the cellular structure of your body. Everything that we eat builds who we are. So we can either age prematurely, or we can reverse the aging process by learning to eat properly again. Thank you so much for enjoying this journey with me and learning things with me. Until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.